In this episode, the featured film takes the viewer on a treacherous boat ride through the stormy seas of the Aegean, tells the story of an elite group of commandos who are tasked with a near impossible mission, and uses the oldest storytelling device imaginable, the Odyssey. These stories and more from the 22nd row. The Guns of Navarone was released in 1961. This is a war movie, a period piece, a history movie, most assuredly an action-adventure movie, and an odyssey. The time of the film is 1943, about 20 years before the release of the film and halfway through the Second World War, which began in September of 1939 and ended in Europe in May of 1945. So the events of this film are not in the too far distant past for the average adult moviegoer of the time. The location of the film is southern Greece, Turkey, and a fictitious island known as Navarone, which leads me to appreciating once again a terrific title, The Guns of Navarone. This movie could easily have been titled The Guns of Greece, The Guns of Crete, The Guns of Cyprus, The Guns of Lesbos, The Guns of many, many other islands in the Aegean Sea, but it is in fact a fictional island, Navarone, The Guns of Navarone. So once again, credit is due to the writer of the book and the producers of the film who stuck with a very catchy, memorable title. Good on them. I've wanted to showcase more than a couple of terrific action-adventure films that were made in the latter half of the golden age of Hollywood, that period between 1955 and 1975, where many of my favorite films were made in this genre. But I have two relatively unshakable requirements for these films, almost unshakable requirements. The first one is, I really enjoy an action-adventure film that is more or less plausible. Now, it's a fiction, it's an adventure film, it's an action film, it's not a documentary, so it's okay for there to be sequences in the film that maybe stretch our belief, but if the film is well written and we're into it right from the opening few minutes, it doesn't matter if some of the action and some of the obstacles that our commandos face might be hard to believe. It doesn't matter. But what is challenging is when those obstacles and the problems that they face and the way they get out of those problems are hard to believe. And so the films I like the most in the action-adventure genre have a great deal more plausibility than other films in the action-adventure genre. Doesn't mean I don't like them. I just like some of them more. So let's keep it real. Doesn't have to be too real. We want to tell a story. We want to tell an exciting adventure story that sucks us in right from the get-go and is not too dry or too ordinary. It has to be exciting. The second requirement is I like films that have strong female characters. Now that is not to say that I don't like action films or many films that only have male leads. And there are many films like that, two of which come to mind are The Treasure of Sierra Madre, released in 1948. There are no women in that film. And 2001: A Space Odyssey, which for 99.9% of the time in that film, there are no women in that film. Both films I like, but there's a danger when you have only testosterone on the screen. Now, some might think of Paths of Glory, which I spoke of in an earlier episode, where there are very few or hardly any females in that movie. But not a spoiler alert, there is in fact a scene in which there is a female, and it is a spectacular scene, and a scene that I mentioned elevates the film beyond being already a terrific movie. And so that simple addition of a female actress in a very important role really changes the character of the film. And so I like films with strongly written, well-written female characters. So The Guns of Navarone satisfies both these requirements. Yes, it's an action adventure. Yes, the ability to get out of jams might be a little, magic word, far-fetched, but it isn't really. It's plausible enough for me. And the female leads in this film, and this is also not a spoiler alert, if the viewer is checking the credits at the beginning, they'll notice that there are 2 females listed in the credits, but they don't appear right away in the beginning of the film. In fact, they don't appear for a substantial amount of time in the first quarter of the film. But they appear, and they are both well written and absolutely central to the story. And so that's why I chose, for the first action-adventure film of this series, The Guns of Navarone. Now, as mentioned, the structure of this film is based on an odyssey. It's not, well, of course it's a coincidence, or maybe it is a coincidence, that this particular film is shot around the same location as the most famous Odyssey ever written, the actually named Odyssey, written by Homer some 2,000 years ago, which of course takes place in Greece and Turkey, and initially the city known as Troy, and then later on areas around the Aegean and the Mediterranean. So what exactly is an Odyssey? An Odyssey has 2 requirements. One is a journey of some sort, whether to a place or from a place. That journey must have many, many, many obstacles for our heroes to overcome. And the more obstacles, the better. And the more difficult they are, the better. And the seemingly impossible way to get out of them, the better. There is also the characters involved. Our heroes must change, either a little or a lot. Change from when they started the Odyssey to when they finished their Odyssey. That change is usually for the better. The tough guys become a little softer, or the tough men or women become a little softer. The heroes maybe show some cowardice. Some of the cowards maybe show heroism. It's all part of the Odyssey to have a transformation of characters from one kind of person to a slightly different kind of person. The effect of that Odyssey changes them. The other element of an Odyssey is it takes time. Now, in the Odyssey of Homer is written about one of the soldiers who defeated Troy. His name was Odysseus. Odysseus' Odyssey. Now, people may be more familiar with the Latinized version of that name, Ulysses. But Odysseus was one of the warriors in the Trojan War who helped destroy Troy. And so he and his band had to go home after the war. Well, as it so happened, it took them about 20 years to get home. That's a long time. And 20 years means there's a whole lot of conflict and obstacles and problems that they encounter with the gods, with creatures. My favorite, I think, is the Cyclops. All kinds of things go wrong. And finally, our hero, again, no spoiler alert, but our hero, Odysseus, arrives back home, and he's in a very foul mood. Like anyone who's had a long trip knows how that feels. However, the Guns of Navarone satisfies almost all these requirements. It is an Odyssey. This Odyssey is not a return home. This Odyssey is a mission. They have to go from point A to point B and do something. And to get from point A to point B, the Odyssey element is that there are all kinds of conflicts and obstacles in their way, so they can't accomplish their mission. And each one of these seems almost impossible to overcome. But because it's an adventure story and because we have heroes, chances are we know that they're going to overcome it. But the joy of watching this film is how they overcome it. And that's not to say there won't be sacrifices and characters lost along the way. There may be, there may not be. But at any rate, they are going from leaving their start point to the destination, in this case the island of Navarone, and doing something about 2 huge guns that are on that island that are blowing up Allied ships. These are the Germans, of course, who are the bad guys in this movie. Now, one thing this Odyssey is not typical of is it doesn't take 20 years for them to do this mission. In fact, they only have a couple of days to do this near impossible mission, which I think, of course, enhances the excitement of the film, the pacing of the film. They can't just take their time and, well, forget 20 years. Let's say they take 6 months or something. They've got just a few days to perform the near impossible. But the critical element of this story is those conflicts and those obstacles. Each one has to be near impossible, and they have to be overcome somehow. So what we enjoy in watching this adventure is, here's another one. Are they going to get out of this one? There's no guarantees. They could be completely sidetracked. Are they going to survive this obstacle? Is everyone going to survive it? Are they going to lose people along the way? And are they eventually going to get where they have to get, which is the meeting point on the island of Navarone, to prepare for the final aspect of their mission, which is to do something about those huge German guns firing on British shipping. And I think in the Guns of Navarone, this is brilliantly executed. Again, plausibility for me is important, and however much we push to the edge of believability on some of these obstacles, it's enough for me that it is realistic enough. They do get out of them, it makes sense, or they go to great efforts, as far as I'm concerned, to have them believable, and each one is as fun as the one before. And so I like that element very much, and I think the Guns of Navarone has done a terrific job with that. Again, it's a case of a very well written script, and whoever's involved, whether it's the director or the actors or whoever is contributing to the execution of this story, I believe they've done a terrific job. So let's talk about this story. The source material for this story was a novel written by a fellow called Alistair MacLean. Now, Alistair MacLean, between about 1957 and 1967, had a really nice string of very successful novels. The Guns of Navarone, I believe, was released in 1957. The other two that I know of are Ice Station Zebra, another great name, and a movie that I'm quite familiar with, and I'll talk about another time, Where Eagles Dare. All these three books, and he wrote many more, were quite successful, were made into movies, and MacLean had quite a run. Not surprisingly, he was a World War II veteran. And you don't have to be a war veteran to write a good war story, but he was a war veteran, I believe, from the Navy, and so he had a lot to fall back on when writing these action-adventure war movies. Each of these three books, Ice Station Zebra, has a military background to it. It's not about the Second World War, but there's a military element to it, and it is, again, a very suspenseful story. But Where Eagles Dare is another war movie, is almost a quest-like film, like the Guns of Navarone, but it ranks very low on the plausibility scale and very high on the body count scale. Watching it today, it's not quite funny, but it's amusing to see how many of the bad guys, the Germans, don't make it through that film, usually at the expense of one character, a fellow by the name of Clint Eastwood, who plays an American assassin in this another group of commandos who's on a mission that has to do this or that or the other thing. It is far-fetched. It is fantastical, but it's kind of a lot of fun, but a very different movie, I think, than The Guns of Navarone. So, The Guns of Navarone, well scripted, well executed, and in addition to the obstacles, it's very important that there are lots of twists and turns to the story. It doesn't just trundle along, say, oh, we get into a fight, we get out of it, we get into another scrum, we get out of it, we get into another fight, we get out of it. There's twists and turns. There could be potentially betrayal. There could be surprises. There could be things happen that nobody expects to happen. And that's also part and parcel, I think, of an excellent adventure film. And there's definitely plenty of twists and turns in The Guns of Navarone. Where there's more of, in a movie like Where Eagles Dare, is twists and turns upon twists and turns. But that's for another story. To enjoy a movie like The Guns of Navarone, released some almost 65 years ago, which is a lifetime, and I never saw it when I was young. The first time I saw this movie was on television. You have to do some explanation at the beginning. And although explanations can be difficult and sometimes can really slow down a film, There's a prologue to this movie. The explanations begin right at the beginning, which I think is a great place to start, especially a prologue with a narration by a very capable British actor who has one of those voices that the British seem to be able to create actors and actresses who just come up with these golden voices with very pleasing to the ear and articulated perfectly. And the prologue narrator discusses what this movie is going to be about, the problem, what they have to do to fix that problem, where are they in the world, and how much time do they have to fix it. So it's really nicely executed, and it's a great lead-in to the beginning of our story. And in fact, this movie wastes very little time, especially at the beginning where everything has to be set up. And this is true of many action films, where the more time you waste in the setup, the slower the film gets, and you tend to lose some of your audience. I don't want it to go rapidly. I don't want it to go lightning fast. I want them to find the commandos, get the group together, tell them what they have to do, tell them what the problem is, tell them how much time they have, and then go do it. And as I mentioned, unlike the typical Odyssey that takes 10, 15, 20 years, this one takes about 3 days. And in fact, the movie tracks this day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4 by the hour almost. So that really allows for the pacing of the film to be rapid. And I think that's very important. We have a very well constructed story. It's come from source material that was very successful. We now have to cast it, and as I have said before and will say again, casting is as equally important to the success or the enjoyment of a film as any other element. The story perhaps is, for me, the most important, but certainly after the story, we have to get people in these well-constructed roles to execute them and to be believable. And I find that the cast of the Guns of Navarone is, in my opinion, first rate. We have, first of all, our friend from Roman Holiday, an actor by the name of Gregory Peck. He was mid-30s for Roman Holiday, released in 1953, and now he's 7 years older for this film. Has a little more gravitas, does look kind of more like a leader rather than a very young reporter from Roman Holiday. He looks like a leader. He looks a little tougher. He's a little bit older. I want to add at this point that I tried to say very little about who the actors and actresses are who star in this movies, because as I will continue to say, they are all lost to time. However recognizable they are for me and for the avid moviegoer, if I am to introduce this film to a new set of moviegoers or people who haven't seen too many movies, none of these people, their names, their backgrounds, their track records really mean anything. At the same time, I do want to talk about these actors. I do want to mention them. I do want to identify them because they've done terrific work. And certainly in this film, as I say, the casting is very important. If we have our group of 4 or 5 heroes, some resistance fighters, and even the bad guys who really take a very minor part in this film, it has to be cast really well to take the film to the next level, to the point where I don't just like a film, I like a film a whole lot, the way I like the Guns of Navarone a whole lot. So Gregory Peck is our leading man. I think very well suited for his role as the expert mountain climber soldier. And I don't care about all the stuff written about this movie. I don't care. Like I say, 99% of my interest is what's up there on the screen. Do we like it? Do we not like it? Do we buy into the story? Do we not buy into the story? Then we have a second man, the experienced, knowledgeable man of the area, a man from Crete, who is tough as nails, but knows how to get the job done. And the actor they chose is Anthony Quinn, who already had a terrific track record, was a bona fide star in his own right, but I think plays this particular character as we would want it to be played. He's very tough, he's very smart, he does a terrific job. Next up is the leader of the group, British officer. His name is Anthony Quayle. Well, Anthony Quayle was not a superstar or a big star, but he had been in a lot of very good movies. Movies like Lawrence of Arabia, for example, and was also a war veteran. And so he's the leader of this group. Then we have the munitions expert. They need someone who is good at blowing things up. For this particular mission, they need someone who can blow things up. And so they selected a very popular face, a very accomplished actor from England named David Niven. And again, there's stuff written about he's too old for the part and all that, but I don't care. Is he believable? Were there older men in the war? Of course there were. Does it work in the story? And the answer is yes, absolutely. And he is both funny, is very cynical, doesn't like officers per se. It's just a really well-written role. And just to add, even though Niven felt that maybe he wasn't right for the part, he ended up saying it was one of the best jobs he ever did in films. And Niven had at least a 40, 50-year career in movies. So again, I think it was an expert casting decision. Then we have to have a natural-born killer. If they're commandos, they have to have someone who doesn't even blink when killing people because there's Germans to be killed. And I want to add here that it's important that the body count in this film is not that high. Yes, there are more Germans killed than the good guys, but they're not killed in the hundreds, like a movie in Where Eagles Dare, in the movie Where Eagles Dare, where there are hundreds of Germans killed by almost one guy. So we have our natural-born killer. And they chose, oddly enough, a fellow who looks Greek. I don't know if he is Greek or not. His name was James Darren. Very young fellow, but he was a pop star at the time. In the 1960s, he was a very recognizable face. And I guess the powers that be for this film, well, we got to have somebody to bring in the younger crowd. Here's a nice 20, 21-year-old. Looks really good on screen, and he gets to play out of character. He gets to be a natural-born killer. And I think he does a terrific job. Then we have the mechanic. They got to take a boat to get from their launch point to the island of Navarone. So they need this rickety boat, and they need someone who is good with engines. And they chose for this character Stanley Baker, who was at the time as famous a British actor in cinema as anybody. Oddly enough, he took a very small role in this film for many reasons, which you can look up to find out why. But he plays the mechanic and also is a killer as well. He's been fighting Germans, he says, since the Spanish Civil War, where Germany helped one of the sides of the Spanish War to fight against the Republicans. Another story. So that's our band. Stanley Baker, as I mentioned, was also a war veteran. So that's our group. It's important when we cast a film. We're now in this chair of the producer. We're going to cast this film. And Hollywood rarely made this mistake. And the mistake is having two actors looking similar. Now, they could be a lead actor and a supporting actor or even a lower level actor, but we can't have people look the same. It can be confusing. And I would say, especially for new audiences, today's audiences, looking back at a film made in 1961, who don't know these faces, have never seen them, and then look and say, well, which one is our hero? Which one is the boss? Those two guys kind of look alike. In this film, none of them, there are no two characters who look alike. They all look very different, and that's very important. The next time you see a movie, even with people you know, and you look at the 4 or 5 leads, if there's an ensemble cast or more than just a couple of people in the film, whether it's actresses or actors, does anybody look similar to the other ones? And that, I think, is an error in casting and can cause trouble for those of us who want to get into the story and really not notice these things. So the casting of A Guns of Navarone is another reason why I like this movie as much as I do. The next thing to talk about with The Guns of Navarone is the pacing. Now, the pacing of a film doesn't have to be lightning speed. especially with adventure films. It can't be slam, bang, nothing in between. It's very common for adventure films to have quieter moments and then have moments of tremendous excitement, have suspenseful moments of short, medium, long duration, but there's always an ebb and flow to the film as long as the direction everybody's heading is toward the climax. The beginning is very fast. We know what the problem is. We are told in the beginning who all the players are going to be. Who is this band of elite commandos and what are all their skills? And then he's told, I know this mission is almost suicidal, but this is war and you've got to do it. And this is why I think the choice of the war backdrop is very critical, because of course there were many missions, there were many commando units created in the Second World War. Many of them, they say, attributed to Prime Minister Winston Churchill, who was a big fan of these commando raids. Maybe hundreds of them. And none of them particularly caused the end of the war, or the result of those raids meant the war was over, but it would make a difference. And in this case, the suspense is created by the timing. As I mentioned, it's just a few days. And yes, if they satisfy this mission, this near impossible mission, they're not going to end the war, but what's going to happen is they're going to save thousands of lives. And this is where the suspense comes from. What you do or don't do on this mission, you're going to save lives or they're all going to die. So we know that right from the start, and that's in our mind the whole time we're watching this film. The other element of the Guns of Navarone, as I've said, is there are women in this film. Strongly written women, terrific actresses. And if I continue on with my casting, the two parts, the two women's parts in this film, as I said, are absolutely crucial, I think, to the success of this film. I won't tell you where they come into the film or how they meet up with our commandos, but they do meet up with our commandos. One is a very experienced woman who's been fighting the Germans in Greece and Crete, in wherever in this theater of war in the Second World War for many years, and is very accomplished, knows her way around a machine gun, and is tough as nails. And the other woman is her protege, who has had problems, lots of problems, and it's explained in the film what those problems are. And so these two are perfectly set up to advance the suspense and cause other issues which our heroes have to deal with. They are part of the twist and turn element of this movie. The older woman, I dare say older, her name is Irene, and she was a terrific actress who also starred in a film that I like very, very much called Zorba the Greek. And she is Greek by heritage, and she does a terrific job in this movie, I think. The other actress is Scala. She's very young. I believe she was of Italian descent, playing a Greek woman. She's very young in this film, but let's say late teens, early 20s. Very attractive, and necessarily attractive for the reasons that the movie will unveil. So they both do, I think, a terrific job. And as I say, it just adds another layer to the film, more depth to the film. It just makes the whole viewing experience of this movie deeper. It's not like a one-level film, a one-trick pony of a film, action film, lots of shooting, lots of bodies. The good guy wins, the bad guy loses. There's a lot of fun films like that. But for me, the films I like the most have way more depth than that. And these two women characters just provide the amount of depth that I think takes the Guns of Navarone from being a terrific action film to a, dare I say it, a spectacular action film. Well, this isn't all suspense and heroics and cliffhanger after cliffhanger, although there is, as I mentioned in my description, a legitimate cliffhanger in this film. There's comedy, and if I don't dare say comedy, I'd say there are funny moments in this film that sort of come out of nowhere, but I find them humorous. So whether or not they were intended to be, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of toing and froing with the band of commandos. There's some anger, there's some hate, but there's also scenes written crazy. And I want to mention two of them. In one scene, the explosive expert is very good friends with the leader of the group. And he has some trouble with how the other commandos treat the leader of the group. And one of them has a very deprecating comment about the leader. And our explosive expert says, "That's easy for you to say, drinking coffee." So as a coffee drinker myself, I thought that was rather funny, because I thought, what did we do to deserve this insult? We're just drinking coffee. The other scene that I thought was unintentionally funny is the nature of our hero, Gregory Peck, the mountain climber in the film, is that he allegedly speaks Greek perfectly, or like a Greek, as they say in the movie, and German like a German. So there's a scene in which he is dealing with a German officer, and that officer has to talk to somebody under gunpoint. And our hero says to him, "Remember, I speak German, perfect." And I've always wanted to say to Gregory Peck, I think grammatically correct is, "I speak German perfectly," but it's okay. I just thought the way he said it just sounded a little funny, a little strange, but I got past it. There's other points in the film that have interesting moments like that, lightweight, that I think give, again, a balance to the film. It isn't all one note. It's up and down, it's action, it's calm, it's action, it's calm, but always with the goal of increasing the suspense until we get to the final moments of the film where our commando group has to do something to save a whole lot of lives. One of the best things about an action-adventure film is we, the audience, pretty much know that our heroes are going to prevail. Now, that doesn't mean we might lose some of those heroes along the way. That doesn't mean that they will be 100% successful. Maybe they're only 80% successful. But this is a movie. It's an action-adventure movie. And so we probably know that they're going to be successful. The joy is in figuring out how they do it, going along with them and seeing if they are going to be successful, how they overcome these obstacles. And of course, if they are successful, given this is an odyssey, given this is a mission in which they have to go from A to B into a very dangerous island of Navarone, if they are successful, how many are going to come back? So let's brave those perilous seas. Let's scale those unscalable cliffs. Let's join up with our commandos on their almost impossible mission and see what happens in the Guns of Navarone from the 22nd row.